Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football, taking a look at another 2023 NFL mock draft for the Detroit Lions. This is post Carolina trading up to that number one overall spot, and a lot of the talk is around who Carolina is going to take with this number one overall pick, and not enough emphasis is being had on the teams like Seattle, the teams like Detroit that are seemingly growing the possibility that they have a guy like Will Anderson or Jalen Carter falling into their lap at that 5 and 6 pick. We're going to talk a little bit about that, the potential scenarios now that the Panthers are up at that number one overall spot. But before we do, again, I just want to say thank you to you guys, especially the Lions fans. We've done a couple mock drafts for the Detroit Lions, and you guys have been absolutely awesome with the support and feedback. There's a reason why I love doing these videos is talking with the fans from different NFL teams about how we want these what positions to address, what kind of prospects we want to address. And again, I kind of specialize in taking a look at these college prospects, giving you guys my takes on that, and you guys give me awesome input with what you want your teams to be doing. So I really do appreciate that. Let's get into this Detroit Lions mock draft. And let's start talking about the potential scenario where Will Anderson or Jalen Carter falls to number 6. One, Jalen Carter having some off the field issues could hurt his draft stock. But what we're looking at right now is the Panthers, the Texans, and the Colts seemingly locked in to take quarterbacks. That means the Lions need one more team, whether it's the Seahawks, whether it's the Cardinals, to take a quarterback, and they're getting Jalen Carter or Will Anderson at 6, which I would think would be the steal of the draft. So let's fire this up, see what happens. And again, I think Will Anderson probably getting taken by this right now as we stand. This probably makes the most sense, right? It doesn't really matter for Lions fans what order these quarterbacks go, but Will Anderson going to the Cardinals and Jalen Carter going to the Seattle Seahawks probably makes the most sense. Now, I think the Cardinals are definitely picking up the phone for trade offers. A guy like Will Levis still on the board. You could see a team like the Commanders, like the Tennessee Titans, like the Raiders want to get up into that top 4 to take their quarterback of the future. And if that happens and the Lions are sitting there getting a guy like Jalen Carter or Will Anderson would be absolutely massive. And this market doesn't play out, but I think the Lions here, you have a lot of good options, right? Tyree Wilson, Devon Witherspoon. I like Christian Gonzalez the most. All would be phenomenal picks for this number 6 spot. I'm not opposed to trading back. If you take a look at like if the Falcons want to come up and you give them that 8 and maybe you get the 3rd round for that 6, I don't think that's a horrible trade for you. You get a lot more draft capital, and quite frankly, I think you can use that 3rd round pick to maybe come in and get a 3rd first round pick in this draft. We'll kind of see how it plays out. But again, Lions sitting at 8 now. I think you go get a guy like Christian Gonzalez. You traded back, you got an extra 3rd round pick, and you still get the cornerback 1 in my mind of this draft, and that's Christian Gonzalez. Again, I wouldn't fight you if Witherspoon was your cornerback 1. I wouldn't fight you if Joey Porter Jr. was your cornerback 1. Christian Gonzalez for me, though, is my cornerback 1 just because of the traits. He's 6'2", he's 200 plus pounds. He absolutely flies. He jumps out of the gym. He has all the traits to be a all-pro kind of cornerback. Obviously, transferring from Colorado to Oregon, looked phenomenal. Not a lot of holes in his game. And again, I love traits in my cornerback. So you go up and get a guy like that, kind of solidifies that cornerback position. And that pick 18, this is where I think you can do a lot of damage from a lot of different ways. Kalijah Kancey, he's kind of that weird kind of 3-tech, 6'1", 286 pounds. So he's not necessarily an animal on the interior, but he's a damn good player who can generate some big-time pass rush from the inside. Brian Branch, one of my favorite players in the draft, and I know you went Christian Gonzalez. Brian Branch is a dude that's just going to play everywhere for this Detroit Lions team if you go get him. I think he's a top 15 guy, maybe even a top 12 guy on my big board. I'm still kind of shuffling players around. I think that'd be a really good pick. I think Brian Brzee makes a lot of sense here for the Detroit Lions too. You want some interior presence. You obviously miss out on Jalen Carter. Brian Brzee is a dude that if you have your interviews with him and you kind of get a better explanation of why his 2022 film wasn't that good, obviously coming off a torn ACL, his sister passed away from cancer. He had kidney disease and mono during the season. I mean, this dude was hampered from multiple different ways. It's not a surprise he didn't play his best football in 2022, but when you go back and watch the 2020 film of him as a true freshman, like they don't make guys who are 6'5", 300 plus pounds, who are that explosive and that strong and move that well. I think the potential for Brian Brzee is sky high. He was one of the highest rated recruits ever out of high school, dominated as a true freshman. And then obviously the ACL and some of the stuff that happened off the field, I think hurt his play. But at 18, I mean, you're getting a guy that most people had kind of pegged as a blue chip top 5 prospect coming out of high school. And then even heading into 2022, a lot of people still thought of him as a top 10 prospect. The 2022 film wasn't as good, but I'm willing to bet on the upside. I'm willing to bet that he's going to get right off the field, get healthy. I think Brian Brzee would be a phenomenal pick for the Detroit Lions, who want some more presence on the interior. Now, again, you have let's pause this draft real quick and say Bijan Robinson's still on the board here. He's obviously not, goes 24, which is wild that they would go get Etienne and Bijan Robinson. I love the idea of the Lions trading back up, using one of those third round picks to come back up and get a guy like Bijan Robinson. Obviously, it's not there here, but in the future, when you're kind of playing around with different scenarios for the Detroit Lions, I think that would make a ton of sense for Detroit. 48, Felix Anudike-Uzomah. If you're trying to just, I know the edge position has been handled for Detroit, but if you're trying to get better, I think that would make a lot of sense. Tommy Adebawore, he's a versatile defensive lineman that he can play kind of anywhere. I would love Steve Avila. The Steve Avila from TCU is one of the more steady blue chip interior offensive linemen in this class. I think that is probably, this defensive line for Detroit is really good. Outside of probably kind of missing a interior defensive line dude, Steve Avila is a guy who's a plug and play guy. Do I think he'll be an all-pro? Probably not, but he's going to be a damn good guard for whatever team gets him. And that was one of your guys' feedback. A lot of the we hit on a lot of positions of need besides that interior offensive line spot. Steve Avila, when you look at the interior spot, John Michael Schmitz would be a phenomenal option. I think he's going to be playing more of a center role for Detroit or for whatever team drafts him in the NFL. Although he could play guard, I think Steve Avila is the last guy on that interior offensive line that I really like. Andrew Voorhees, unfortunately, tearing his ACL at the combine. He was a dude that I really liked. In terms of guards, Steve Avila is probably the best available. Probably won't be around at pick 55. So I think you go up and get a blue chip interior offensive lineman here. And then at 55, I want to address that linebacker spot. I really do think Detroit needs to get better at linebacker. I love the Malcolm Rodriguez pick. I think he's going to be good, but I think they could use another body in that linebacker room. And Jack Campbell's been my pick. It looks like he went 44 to the Falcons. Jack Campbell would be the guy here. But I love Dion Henley. I think he's another player that when you look at what you want in the NFL out of your linebacker spot, it's a guy who's a hyper athlete who can go pretty much anywhere on the field, stretch the field. He's a tackle machine for Washington State. I think that would make a lot of sense here. And you get two. I mean, Malcolm Rodriguez was one of my favorite linebackers last year coming out of Oklahoma State. I think Dion Henley makes this team a lot better. And again, I think there's a little bit of a fall off from that linebacker spot. So let's go up. I mean, it would be fun to go get a guy like Noah Sewell. That being said, I have some serious concerns about his athleticism playing at the next level. I kind of value, and I know you want to pair him up with Penei. I do too, quite frankly, as an honorary Detroit Lions fan. But at this point, I really do think Henley is one of the best linebackers available, and there is a little bit of a fall off after Henley. So I think you take the best player available at a position of need. I think that makes a lot of sense for Detroit. And you're sitting here with another third round pick from that trade down with the Atlanta Falcons. A lot of different spots you could go. I don't hate adding another wide receiver. Y'all did not like the tight end pick that we went with. I believe we went with Darnell Washington. There's not really a tight end on this board. Wouldn't mind taking a look at another cornerback, maybe one of more of those slot cornerbacks. Hodges Tomlinson, Eli Ricks, two guys that I absolutely love. Hodges Tomlinson he's just absolutely nails in the slot. Again, he's a little bit smaller of a guy. Played on the outside mostly at TCU, but 34.6% completion percentage against him, passer rating 42.5. This dude has been really good at TCU for a very long time. I'm not going to lie, though. If you're asking me my sleeper of the draft for the Detroit, I've even mocked Eli Ricks at 18 to the Detroit Lions. Eli Ricks is a dude that he's a polarizing prospect because he's had some off-the-field issues. A former five-star who started his career at LSU, transferred to Alabama, got some off-the-field issues. But you look at his ability in coverage, he's only targeted 19 times. And quite frankly, I don't blame quarterbacks for not targeting him. He's a Joey Porter Jr. clone in my mind. It's very rare to find guys who are 6'2", long arms, but have the fluid hips that a guy like Eli Ricks has. I'm a massive fan of Eli Ricks. The one question is he hasn't played that much football because of the suspension, but you know the traits are there. He can play outside. I think you can do a lot of different things with a guy like Eli Ricks. I mean, I know you're doubling up Christian Gonzalez, Eli Ricks. You have Jeff Okuda. You got a lot of talent in that cornerback room, which was a massive concern for Detroit heading into this draft. And getting a guy like Christian Gonzalez, getting a guy like Eli Ricks, who I think is the best player available on this board, I think would make a lot of sense for Detroit Lions. I'm kind of interested to hear that take. Like, do you really think the Detroit Lions need to go 2 cornerbacks in this class? Because I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world, especially when you get 2 guys who are kind of my favorite players in this draft class. 81, Tank Dell staring me right in the face. They're really trying to get me to go with Tank Dell too. Michael Wilson would make a lot of sense, especially if I like Michael Wilson. I think let's see. Let's take a look at the free agents here for the Detroit Lions. DJ Chark maybe not getting. Let DJ Chark walk and go get a guy like Michael Wilson or A.T. Perry, 2 guys that I absolutely love. Michael Wilson, I'll give you a little scouting report on both of them. One, A.T. Perry. I went to Wake Forest, so I'm a massive A.T. Perry fan. Good length, great ball skills, and he's due to 6'3" with some long arms. He plays above the rim, which I think gives the Detroit Lions something they don't really have in terms of their wide receiver room right now. I also think, I'm going to do a little 180 for you guys. We didn't get Bijan Robinson. I think you could go and get a running back now. My take, and as much as I love Jamal Williams, I think all Detroit Lions fans love Jamal Williams, and he might even come back. But I don't think you're going to overpay for a guy like Jamal Williams when this running back class is as deep and as talented as it is. You got Tank Bigsby, a former 5-star. Tajay Spears, I absolutely love. Roshan Johnson, I love. Zach Evans, a former 5-star. My favorite player right now is probably Tank Bigsby. I think that would make a lot of sense. And again, like, you get to save some money on a Jamal Williams guy who's turning 28 before the season starts. Instead of dishing out some money in free agency to Jamal Williams, I think Tank Bigsby and DeAndre Swift probably not going to have a long future in Detroit either, as much as I like the player. I think Tank Bigsby would make a lot of sense at pick 81. And then you got a while at 153. And that's kind of why I wanted to address that running back spot, because round 3 and round 4 are kind of the sweet spot if you're talking about running backs. I don't think there'll be that many good running backs sitting there at 153, 182, 193. So go up and get a guy that you really like. And I have kind of a sleeper wide receiver. I hope he falls to the Detroit Lions here. We'll see if he is. Take a look. Be there. Bryce Ford Wheaton. There he is. Bryce Ford Wheaton is a guy that when you watch the film, you're thinking he's a dude that's big, 6'3", 224, and kind of his production comes from his physicality at the catch point, and that's certainly true. Then he goes to the combine, 4'3", 840, 40-inch vertical. This dude tests off the charts in terms of a playmaker who can stretch the field. And I know you got Jameson Williams, but Bryce Ford Wheaton offers you a little bit more of a guy who can go play above the rim, go be a physical wide receiver, not a speedster. And I think in terms of St. Brown, Jameson Williams, and now you got kind of like your bigger wide receiver that can go play, be a factor in the red zone. I think this would make a ton of sense for the Detroit Lions. And I know you want to address the defensive side of the ball. I think we have done that. Bryce Ford Wheaton is one of my sleepers of the draft here, and I think would be a phenomenal pick at 153. Pick 182, 193 coming up. So 2 6-round picks here. Still some good players. Cam Jones would not be a bad guy to add to that linebacker room at all, in my opinion. If you passed on Tank Bigsby, I think Eric Gray would make a lot of sense. I love Eric Gray's game. Looking at some more of the guys, Dylan Horton is a Dan Campbell guy, just an endless motor, plays the game the right way. Ricky Stromberg's another guy. I think you double up here. I mean, this linebacker room hasn't been good. Anzalone probably not coming back, or at least I wouldn't sign him back. Cam Jones banged up his senior year, but he's a very good athlete who's been very productive when playing for Indiana. I don't know if he's a day one starter for Detroit, but I think he's a guy that's going to play on special teams, and just another talented linebacker to add to your room, because again, that linebacker room, in my opinion, for the Detroit Lions ain't that great. So let's go get Cam Jones here from Indiana. That's more of a best player available. He's a top 150 guy on my board. So I think that would make a lot of sense. And you guys hated when I took the tight end, so I'm not going to do it, but I really did like Davis Allen. I think he's super solid. Ricky Stromberg, if you want to kind of just address some depth on that offensive line, I think Ricky Stromberg is kind of a guy to do that with. I think that the pick will be Ricky Stromberg, if we're being honest here. unless I really like someone that pops out. Elijah Higgins is an interesting guy. Justin Shorter is another guy, kind of like Bryce Ford Wheaton, really big wide receiver who plays well above the rim, but also runs really well. I think you go get Ricky Stromberg. He's a guy that's going to play center. And I know you have that position locked up, but I think in round 6, just go get some good players. Go build for the future. And I think Ricky Stromberg is a guy that's going to do that for you. He's not the most exciting pick, but he's a 3-year starter at Arkansas. I think that makes a lot of sense here to finish out the draft. I think we address most of the positions that you want Detroit to address in this draft. Cornerback, defensive line, edge, maybe a tight end, but I don't like after some of those top tight ends. I'm not a huge lover. I think this tight end group is very top heavy. Darnell Washington, I still think is going to be a great fit in Detroit if you can figure out a way to get your hands on him. All right, they graded us out at an A, a solid A. That is phenomenal for the Detroit Lions. Christian Gonzalez, I love that trade back. I don't know how it will look, but I think you can get a lot of draft capital if a team wants to go up and trade and get a guy like Will Levis. So you're picking up the phone if Jalen Carter or Will Anderson aren't there at 6. In this case, it was a trade back to the Falcons. Then you go get Brian Brzee, who I think's upside is absolutely unreal. And if you can get even 80% of this guy's potential, he's going to be a phenomenal interior defensive lineman. Steve Avila eating your vegetables there with a very solid interior offensive lineman who, if you need to start day 1, he's going to be able to do that. Dion Henley addressing that linebacker concern with the best linebacker left on the board. I would like it to be Jack Campbell. He's more of my guy than Dion Henley, but Henley is also a top 4 linebacker on my board. Eli Ricks, one of my favorite prospects in this draft. Tank Bigsby, Bryce Ford Wheaton. I knew PFF wouldn't love the Bryce Ford Wheaton pick, but I absolutely love it. And then you go get Cam Jones, another really good linebacker who probably shouldn't be there in round 6 due to injury. And then Ricky Stromberg. Not a need for the Detroit Lions, but you're eating your vegetables. You're getting another good interior offensive lineman at that center position. That'll round out a Detroit Lions mock. This is probably my favorite Detroit Lions mock that we've done. Again, I love that idea. If Jalen Carter, Will Anderson are not there at pick 6, trade back a little bit. You probably still get a guy like Devon Witherspoon, still get a guy like Christian Gonzalez, and you add some capital in that day 2 where there's a lot of talent to be had. Appreciate you guys checking us out again. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.